Welcome everybody to part 2 of me building myself this real grade Gundam model kit. And the first part I went ahead and opened up everything and took everything out of the box, and I got started with this little piece right here, and I'm trying to get, it looks like this area is actually going to be able to extend a lot larger, because these next few parts I have to do, they have like the same sort of step, like 4 separate times, because when the way they do is that if there's like a piece that's like very similar to like another piece that you just did, instead of just having the repeated instructions over and over again, it'll say like ×2 or ×4, because you're gonna have to build that part like 4 extra times. So yeah, like I said, they tried to make this somewhat beginner friendly, and for the most part, you know, these things aren't necessarily like impossible to put together. But again, it can look very sort of overwhelming to people.
Do you do each, if it says ×4, do you do all 4 of them at the same time just to have it done?
Usually I actually do it individually. Mostly because I want to make sure that I don't get lost, because you know my attention span isn't exactly the highest, to tell you the truth.
So when you have to do that piece again, let's say it's 20 minutes later, do you go back in the instructions, or do you remember how to do it?
Usually I just go back to the instructions.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, that's all. So that's like that. And then we got 2 pieces on the F side, which is right here and right here. So we just go like that. And take that little piece out. Excuse me.
Bless you.
So we got like that, and sometimes I actually prefer not using the tools for some bits, and then other times using the tools are actually kind of necessary, especially for the pieces that are like a whole lot smaller. So we go ahead and
Do you ever need tweezers?
Usually I do, but the tweezers that I used to have were very large, and the marks would be a lot more like easier to see compared to something a lot thinner like this. So then we got that one piece done, and then I just got to go ahead and do the same bit. Now, if it's usually a piece that's like takes a lot longer than that, usually I'll go back to the instructions. But for stuff like this, it really isn't overly complicated.
Maybe when you're finished with a piece, we can put it on here, and I can.
Yeah, that would be good actually.
So I think if we have something for it to focus like on.
There you go.
Okay.
So as you can see, those areas are going to like fold into themselves, so it's probably going to be some sort of like, well actually I can actually see what's on here. It's like some sort of like spacecraft that like goes along with it.
Okay.
It looks like.
Got it.
I wouldn't necessarily know, because despite how much I like these things, my knowledge on the Gundam series is actually a bit smaller than I would like to think. Like I have only really seen 2 different series like in their entirety, and I've only seen like bits of some of the other other Gundam shows. Like one of the only ones that I actually saw in its entirety was actually the one that I actually showed you, which, you know, wasn't really that long. It was only like what, maybe 12 episodes at most.
Yeah.
And then there was another series that I watched with Daniel when we were doing our like Hulu Tsunami sort of thing, and that series was called Gundam Wing, which fun fact about that series, that was actually the first series to actually in Gundam to actually make it to the U.S. Like before even like the original Gundam series came to America, they had Gundam Wing air on like the actual Toonami. That was like they would show on like late nights and stuff, or maybe it was back when it was still on like Cartoon Network, like during like the middle of the day rather than like late at night.
What's the first anime you ever saw?
The first anime I ever saw, that's actually a bit of a difficult question because like back then, people grew up with stuff like Pokemon or Dragon Ball Z or Sailor Moon and all that kind of stuff, and that's like at a time before you actually consider calling it anime, because back then, you would usually think to yourself like, oh, it's just like cartoons. Like you don't really hear the term anime be used like very much when you're a kid, but afterwards when you hear what it is, you see it sort of like gains your sort of interest, I guess you could say. And you start calling it more and more, calling it anime more and more. So I'm actually not quite sure what exactly my first anime was. I would have probably have said that it was Pokemon, mostly because that was me and Daniel usually watched the same sort of series. But if it was Pokemon, then I don't really remember too much of what I actually remember seeing, because there are a lot of things that you see when you're a kid, and then that sort of like stick with you, and then there are other things that you see that like.
Well, what has stuck with you?
Mostly like the usual sort of stuff. Like I watched like certain segments of stuff like Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh. Actually, fun fact: we were actually watching a lot of the original Yu-Gi-Oh series on Hulu, and it's funny because you know back then when they were trying to air these sort of series on like kids like next networks like Cartoon Network or 4Kids and all that kind of stuff, they would of course like end up doing a whole lot of like censorship with the show, removing certain things, not airing certain episodes, or getting rid of like certain like primary like Japanese sort of things, which is weird because nowadays people give a lot more respect to anime and aren't really willing to change it like too much for a more like broader audience.
I remember Daniel loved Pokemon more than anything in the world. I remember the episode where they find Charmander and his little tail was going out. That made me cry.
Yeah, the original Pokemon actually had like a lot of like very sad like moments like that, especially with that like piano piece they would play during those parts.
Yeah, and when Butterfree flew away.
That one always gets to me.
Oh God, I can't even. What series could you watch over and over again and not get tired of it?
And not get tired of it?
Well, I don't mean like every day, but like Daniel and I watch Columbo, and like we've seen them all like 12 times, but we always love to watch Columbo. Or like Golden Girls, we've watched it.
The same episodes like repeated over and over.
Well, like we go through the whole series, like season 1 to where the end of the series when Dorothy marries Uncle Lucas. And then we stop for a month or so, and then we just watch it all over again. Like 2 episodes every night. Not every night because he wants to watch wrestling and stuff, but like at least twice. Oh, Jackie boy. No, you cannot put this together. You're not that smart. I mean, he probably is smart enough, but he doesn't have the thumbs. So, and I don't say, oh, crap, Golden Girls again.
Right, you like watching the series.
Right. Or Columbo, like we know like half the not lyrics but the script to the shows, and you don't get tired of it.
Mm.
So is there like a show that you like that you could watch the whole thing once a month?
Not particularly. I mean, there are like anime movies that I could see over and over, like a majority of like the Studio Ghibli films, like Princess Mononoke or Kiki's Delivery Service and all that stuff. I could watch those like over and over and not really get tired of them. But as for like shows individually, I don't really think there is one because a lot of the shows that I watch are like really long.
Right.
So it's like those require a lot more, I guess you could say, dedication to go through.
Right.
Compared to something like a movie where I can get it done in like 1 or 2 hours.
Well, like Daniel loves Kill la Kill. Doesn't he make you watch it all the time?
Yeah, he gave me one of his like slots to pick a show, if he was allowed to rewatch Kill la Kill over and over again.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you know, it's a good show.
But come on.
So it gives me an opportunity to show him another show.
Yeah. What show did you think you would really, really love, but once you watched it, you were like, not so much?
I don't really think I've found the show that's like that. A lot of the things that I do watch, I do tend to find some sort of enjoyment out of, even if I don't think the show is entirely like perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also some shows that, you know, lots of people tend to not really like, but then I end up watching it and I end up really liking it.
Oh, what shows like that?
One of those would actually be Sword Art Online, which is I'm pretty sure you've probably heard of it before. Like, these group of people like get trapped inside of a video game, and they have to try to beat the game in order to get out. And if they die in the game, they die in the real world.
Are you serious? That's what it is?
Yeah.
Oh my god. You know how stupid I am? I always thought that was like a website that people who drew like anime pictures or drawings and stuff would submit their drawings to share their drawings with like-minded people. I didn't know it was like a freaking television show.
It is, and lots of people give the series like a lot of hate. But, you know, I watch the show and I don't mind it. I can understand why lots of people wouldn't like it, but I personally can enjoy it. And it looked, I actually got myself the all those 4 pieces. Now, see, if this was a lower graded kit, then those little like yellow parts at the end would likely be like a sticker or something like that. But, you know, with those type of kits, they're actually separate pieces, so they can get the right amount of detail.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's better than a sticker.
Yeah, because stickers eventually get old, and they start to.
Well, I mean, stickers are cute, but that looks more adult.
But I mean, like stuff like, especially stickers that like wrap around a certain piece. Those are awful.
Yeah, because you always end up with a lump and a bump.
And there's always like a centimeter off from where it has to go, and it just drives you crazy.
And somehow it's crooked. You're like, how did it get crooked? It's a circle. It can't be crooked, but somehow you've got it crooked.
Exactly.
And there's a lump in it, and inevitably a cat hair, and you're just like,
and
no.
Where did I go wrong?
Yeah, really. Why me?
It looks like that's actually all the time that we have for part 2, so I will see you all in part 3.